Keith, Aaron, Allison, welcome to the Game Informer Show, folks.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Yeah, it's rare to have a whole batch of folks. Oh, Ben Reeves is here too, by the way.
Yeah.
He just won't leave.
I worked on the game, so you can't leave.
But it's rare to have a batch of developers on, but it's nice to have the three of you to kind of unpack your old era at Raven and working on Ultimate Alliance 1. It's a fun thing to talk about, so thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Our pleasure.
Where are you calling from?
We're in lovely Madison, Wisconsin, where Raven is still located to this day. We cleared a pasture of cows. We snaked an extension cord out and started making games.
Are the three of you still working together?
No, actually, so Allison and I worked together. So I left Raven 7 years ago and started a company called FlipFly with my brother Forrest. And Allison joined us
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay.
So Allison and I work together at FlipFly, and that's the office we're in now.
Okay, nice. And you guys made Race the Sun, Absolute Drift, stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah.
I saw you have a new game called Cats Fly Helicopters, which is a very good title.
Thanks. Yeah, still in progress.
It's mysterious. Ask them what it's about.
You would never expect it.
Oh.
And Keith, where are you at these days?
So I also am in Madison. I've been doing independent consulting since 2010, predominantly in video games, but also with other tech organizations. So I talk a lot about leadership and building healthy cultures.
Right on. So I think Reeves and I, we both felt a kinship with Raven Software over there, just because we're in Minnesota with Game Informer, and it's so rare to have a studio that has worked on so many different IPs and so many different games just over there in Madison, Wisconsin. It's just mind-boggling. What's the state of the game development scene in Madison right now?
We were just talking about that. Tell them about all the stuff you're sharing to me.
You know, I think it's growing slowly, and lots of small groups are kind of congealing and coming together. So I started a meetup a few years ago called Madison Indies, just to help the indie developers like us, come out of the woodwork and meet each other.
There's been a series of arcade nights for indie games that have been going on for a year. There's been 4 or 5 different nights where people just get together and show off their games in a bar. Mm-hmm. That's been really cool. There's been lots of different meetups. There's also the MDev conference that's happened 2 years now, which gets together a bunch of game developers from all over the Midwest to talk about game development.
There's also several studios that have formed in the last few years. So PUBG has an office here now.
Yeah, that's right.
Epic has them.
Yeah, we've got PUBG and Fortnite.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pretty much solely created within Madison.
What the
That's crazy. Does it feel like Raven's not the big dog anymore, or are they still kind of
Well, they
everybody
still
wants to
have
work
the
there.
largest population under one roof of game developers. They got to be 200 people now or something.
Right.
But as far as the rest of the community, since, I don't know, the past 8 years or so, it has, I would say, significantly grown.
Yeah. Human Head is still doing really well here. They've got Rune in the works. So.
Yeah, they had Quiet Man last year, which was a bizarre game to come out, period. But it's cool that, hey, that was made in Madison, Wisconsin. How much has PUBG and PUBG choosing Madison for that location kind of changed the game industry out there?
I wouldn't say it's changed a lot. I mean, they I think many people, artists, and they kind of just do their own thing. So they're just part of the ecosystem here, I guess.
Okay.
They're not hiring all the Raven people or anything like that. But.
Sure.
Oh, and we totally forgot about Per Blue too.
Yeah.
It's huge mobile doing Disney IP right now.
Yeah.
They're probably the second largest studio in town, I would say now.
Oh, that's
Wow,
Yeah, they
that's
were formed
crazy.
by some former college students here in town many years ago. And not too long ago, they sold an IP for umpteen $1 million.
Yeah, free-to-play mobile stuff.
So they're growing, bunch of sharp folks over there. So, yeah, pretty good scene, really.
That's wild. Okay, let's go back in time now. Okay, Raven. When did everybody start working at Raven? What era was this?
What were your first projects, too? I'm curious about that.
Ooh. Okay, so we'll go as far back as possible. So I started in January of 99.
Oh, wow.
And I worked on Soldier of Fortune, which is a fantastically disturbing military-inspired title that was very briefly banned from sale in British Columbia. That's a resume highlight.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That was the one with all the
crazy
crazy animations, too. They're really, the crazy elaborate death animations for every character, right?
A lot of deaths. Big on the deaths at that point in time.
All right.
Yep, a lot of dismemberment, a lot of death.
Perfect. All right, and that was your first project there.
Yep, exactly so. And so then shortly thereafter, the company had previously just done PC development, and we started doing multi-platform console development back with, first X-Men was GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox Classic. And so that was a very interesting time. We went from I remember on Soldier of Fortune, we had a team of 25 people, and we thought the world was ending because we had no idea how we could have so many developers on one title. And then we wound up with, I think, 90 working on X-Men Legends. And so shortly thereafter, we had a ton of folks. And I think that's when, somewhere in there was when you folks came in.
Yeah, I think I started in 2004. So I came on during X-Men Legends 2, about 2/3 of the way through, or halfway through development of that title. So that was the precursor to Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Yeah. And then what about you, Allison?
Yeah.
I came on in 2003, so I got the last year of X-Men Legends, and I, had to do a lot of Xbox certification stuff. So that was my role on that project, was Xbox, make it work.
That sounds like a hoot.
When did you guys first learn that you were going to have access to the Marvel license? Like, was that a long period of discussion?
I know that early days, and probably throughout development, I think the interface between the licensor and Activision, and then getting down to us on the leaf nodes of the org chart, there was a good level of abstraction where it would kind of be, by the time we found out that we had an art Bible and whatever else, talks had been going on for weeks, if not months. And then it would just sort of filter down to us on the floor. Oh, we're making a Marvel game. That's cool.
That'll do, yeah.
Wait, so what was in that art book then?
Oh, that's classified. No, I don't do art personally. When I draw circles, they have corners, so I don't know if that's something that you were ever exposed to.
No, I never saw the art book.
Do you remember like day one of Ultimate Alliance 1, like the first rumblings of that project happening in the studio?
I do remember that because I remember it was a company meeting where we had just wrapped up, or we were just wrapping up X-Men Legends 2, and somebody said, so the next game is going to be, at the time it was going to be called Marvel Legends, and it was like, it's just like X-Men Legends, but we get to use like all the Marvel characters. And I remember Jeff Butler, who's a concept artist, and like he came from the comic book industry. He just like started jumping up and down and cheering. He was like, yes, this is the best thing ever. So
yeah, Raven was traditionally very art-centric studio and employed a lot of folks for former comic artists and these sorts of. So when we started doing Marvel titles, there was no absence of excitement and passion in evidence.
Right.
Oh, wow. And then for you guys' specific roles, like do you remember step one for making Ultimate Alliance from your perspectives out there?
I think step one was copy and paste the code from X-Men Legends 2.
Yeah, rename the executable
Yeah.
was the first step.
I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, so really we just modding X-Men Legends 2. Eventually it's a new game. That's really kind of how we built those games. So.
That's insane to say.
Yeah, and I wasn't on X-Men Legends 2. I was on Quake 4 for the time when X-Men Legends 2 was happening. So I came back to Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and they were like, here's all the network code that got written by somebody else at a different studio, and it's your problem now.
Good luck.
So I was like,
my
great.
God.
Because I had just done multiplayer for Quake 4 on Xbox One. So then they were like, here you go.
Oh my! I think those games, like I looked at it and like they're almost a year apart in some cases. Like, did that feel just like an insane turnaround even at the time?
So I will say this. I think probably anyone involved in the Legends 2 MUA series would agree. We benefited from pretty much the perfect storm of really positive characteristics. We had a team that largely had been unchanged across 3 projects, that had worked together closely, all the passion in the world. Everybody was excited about the genre, about the characters. And we had, by that time, a comparatively stable code base. We knew what we were doing, and we kind of had driving tenets around. Here are the 3 things we're allowed to change. Right? We're not going to go in and do, we're doing another sequel. Great, everything's different. No. It was we are changing this, this, and this. Other than that, it's just new content.
Yeah.
And I think that made stuff so much easier. And really made it enjoyable that we didn't have to be reinventing a ton of wheels.
Yeah.
Is that safe to say?
They were, because they were short. I mean, MUA was how long of a development? It was
8 months.
5 days. I can't started late on a Monday.
Well, I mean, because I was pregnant for the entire project, and
Oh my gosh.
didn't have the baby until after it shipped, and
This is the units of time that we use in game development. How many pregnancies was that?
Well, no, there was somebody who had 2 kids during X-Men Legends.
See?
So
No digest.
Ooh. That's a brutal long development, yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, it was really smooth. It was, I think there was very little overtime work on that
I don't
project,
remember
think.
working
It was,
any
No one
overtime
remembers
on
doing any sort of overwork scenarios. I
Sure.
think going into X-Men 2, right? It was just, we're changing 3 things, do new heroes, go.
Yeah.
And then going into MUA, from my perspective anyway, it seemed like there was even less of a change as far as tech and what have you. It was just, by the way, you get to use every character ever. And let's just open it up in terms of content, the environments you can go in. So I just remember having fun.
I also think between the leadership team of you running the design team, and then Dan Edwards running the game programming team, and Dan Edwards is just really experienced software engineer, and then Dan Vondrak being an experienced game designer, and just everything from the pipeline to the tools was so good that we had we scheduled out 2 weeks for each hero. We had 24 playable heroes, and we had 2 weeks to start to finish with each one. And we had this pipeline of okay, here's the art team. They're going to hand it to me. I'm going to implement the hero moves and then hand them off to the effects and sound artists, and they know what they're doing. But everything about that whole design was just set when we got there. So it was smooth.
It's crazy.
The ideal behind game development, right, is we have this prototype phase, the pre-production phase, and then you say, all right, we know how to make one of everything. Now just go make all of the things, right? That's the theory. That's kind of what we did on the first 2 Marvel games, was we did all of that. And then it was just great, go make all the things for MUA. That's how I felt. How did it feel from the tech standpoint, though?
Yeah, from the tech standpoint, it was even pretty smooth. And we even added, we shipped on Xbox One and PS3, which were both new platforms for that game, because I think the previous ones had just been Xbox, PS2, GameCube. We might have dropped GameCube at some point. Right?
I know I dropped a GameCube at one point.
Well, the handle, they're asking for it.
It went pretty smooth. I mean, a lot of it was actually just waiting around for Sony to get stuff done for the PS3.
Oh, what was that like?
Well, we went to some conference for developers that was we're going to come out with all these great features, and then they didn't actually come out with them in time because it was a launch title. I'm pretty sure it was a PS3 launch title. And the PS3 version ended up shipping without voice support for multiplayer because they didn't get it done. Sony didn't get us the info on how to implement it in time, and we're like, well, I guess the PS2 version will have voice, but the PS3 won't.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's so bizarre.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, that was.
The other thing that went really well is Gil being the tech lead, Gil Gribb.
Yeah.
He was just really good at saying no to everybody all the time. And so,
That's true.
the art leads would come by, hey, can we get one more light? Nope.
Nope.
Sorry.
We're done. Were there any specific characters you guys were trying to get in, or that Marvel said you have to include this guy? He's going to be big in 5 years.
Everyone wanted Deadpool.
Yeah,
Right?
everybody wanted
everyone
Deadpool.
wanted
Everybody wanted Hulk. We couldn't do Hulk either.
Yeah, licensing stuff.
Right.
We didn't. Yeah, and then at one point, weren't they trying to make us put in Captain Europe? Europe.
Who's the
Captain Britain?
The moon guy, the Marvel version?
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight?
Yeah.
I had never heard of him. They're like, hey, Aaron, we need you to put Moon Knight in the game because somebody wants us.
Moon
I
Knight.
don't remember if Moon Knight was a core part of the game or if that was a DLC or a special
No,
unlock.
I think he was core.
Yeah.
So where's Moon Knight? Somebody said it's like Marvel's version of Batman.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
every third week, it was like somebody's Googling some obscure hero they've never heard of.
Yeah.
Captain Planet? Is that a Marvel? No, it's a blue guy.
It was really easy to fall down like a rabbit hole on Wikipedia, just like reading back history of all the Marvel stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we had dozens and dozens of comics that
Yeah.
got sent to us. So there's just stacks of them.
Yeah.
So I can say this now that I don't work there anymore. I spent probably $10,000 of Activision's money where I was supposed to be doing work, just sitting around reading comics.
Wow, that's
The other
research.
character that came up a lot was Ryan Dan's really wanted to get Howard the Duck back.
Oh,
Ooh.
I don't remember if that ever happened or not.
That
It
would
was
have been
like
cool.
an Easter egg or something.
How does it, so it seems like you guys actually have some say in what characters you want, at least. It's not just Marvel sending a bullet point list and say, do this, you idiots. Is it a lot of discussions around the office of like, can we get this guy in?
oh,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
honestly, I think it was more like we had pretty much creative control as long as they signed off on you guys are allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So there was never a point that I understood where it was like Marvel was dictating anything to us.
Sure.
It was
And
all,
What
my
if they were
impression
like-
was that Raven and Marvel had a really good relationship
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
that
sure.
it was always just like they really liked what Marvel really liked what Raven was doing. Raven would present these things, and Marvel would just be like, "Yeah, okay."
Mhm.
Do you see it as a pretty different Marvel from the Marvel of today?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer. There was no. I can remember. I think we were working on the beginning of MUA when somebody mentioned. So the company that we did a lot of the cinematic stuff with is called Blur, and somebody mentioned, and we love their work. Oh my gosh, top quality stuff. And somebody mentioned, yeah, they're talking about going with Blur and doing an Iron Man movie. And I think they're going to have Tom Cruise as Iron Man. And we were all just astonished at this idea. Oh, wow, a full-length Iron Man movie and Blur is going to do the scene. This is going to be amazing. So that gives you an inkling of how far back in time
Yeah, that's
we were
crazy.
dealing with MUA compared to everything today as the MCU, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it would have been like 2005 or something like that when you guys were starting development on Marvel, or 2004 even?
It's crazy because the guys from Blur eventually went on and did Deadpool too. Which
Yeah.
is
Yes,
interesting connection.
Doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me. Super talented folks. We probably spent, I don't know, a third of our development money just paying them to do cinematics, and we were totally happy with it.
It must have been liberating. I know you don't know what it's like now, but it must have been kind of liberating to work with Marvel in kind of that pre-MCU era, where it's probably a little bit looser. Not that they're like, hey, anything goes, but I'd imagine like the amount of control and care they have to take with each character was just night and day compared to Marvel of today.
Yeah, there was. I mean, when we were working on X-Men Origins Wolverine, there was a lot more
Different.
control because it was related to the movie.
Yeah.
So then there was specification of like this is what the plot has to be
Yeah.
because this is what the movie plot is now.
Sure.
Yes,
So-
exactly. Make sure he looks exactly like Will.i.am. Yeah, I mean, it was more of that.
Okay.
Oh.
But in the days of MUA, yeah, I think that we just kind of sold them on our expertise, and they clearly got
Yeah.
the fact that we were excited and that so many people had deep comic backgrounds on the team that I think they were like, yeah, we trust you, go crazy.
Nice.
One of the things I remember about those games is they were always kind of like goofy at times. I was definitely like silly, but I would say fun, which I liked. Was that like intentional? You're like, let's just like throw everything at the screen and see what sticks, kind of a thing.
you would have to ask Bob Love if that was intentional or not. None of us really know.
Our writer who laid out a lot of the initial groundwork for the story. But then also we would just find things randomly that worked really well
Yeah.
Right.
and just go wild. I remember when Sean Campbell, one of our level designers, so it's a pulled back, largely isometric view, and he said, well, what if you pull the camera so far back that it seems like the background is two-dimensional, and then we make it like an old Intellivision game?
Mhm.
And we said, okay, how long will that take you to prototype? Well, I did it over lunch. Okay, and that's how we wound up with the what Activision get Pitfall.
Pitfall, yeah.
With the Pitfall levels in there,
Okay.
where you've got Ghost Rider or whoever running around in Pitfall levels.
And as I recall, like the design process was something like a designer owned a level of the game, and they could just write up a design workbook or something and present it to the leads, and then you would sign off on that, and they'd get to make that.
Yeah, yeah. We had X number of environments that we wanted to do throughout the game, and those would largely be story driven. So they'd say, yeah, if you're going to do something in, there's got to be a sewer somewhere, and then you're going to do one in Murder World, and so we would just hand those off to the designers to do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And so when you go to Murder World, which is some wacky, bizarro theme park of death, why wouldn't you get thrown into an ancient Activision pitfall level?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Makes perfect sense.
Do you remember?
There's something really special about having a team that's experienced enough and small enough that you can just give a chunk of the game to an individual, though. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a thing that's kind of lost in huge AAA development now, where it's like, if you're going to make a Call of Duty level, you have a team of 5 or 10 or 15 people working on one chunk of the game for 6 months, and you have to have like all these like managerial structure just to get things done. It was very much like, okay, Justin just owns this, and he's going to come back and show us what he made next week, and I think that's where the creativity really comes through.
Yeah, Keith, do you remember some specific things that you got in the game you're really happy about? Some specific details that you were pushing for?
So my role was largely superfluous. I'll just be straight up with
You're
that.
reading comics in the bathroom. We got that.
True.
Yeah.
We had this team of like 10 to 12 level designers that had been doing this stuff literally for years. And my primary responsibility was overseeing them, making sure they stuck to a schedule and that sort of thing. So it was really just, here are the environments, which ones do you folks want to work on? And my greatest joy came in seeing them do amazing work to schedule, and having somebody play one of their levels for the first time and having them laugh out loud or just have a ton of fun during development. That personally was the greatest success as far as I was concerned. The fact that people didn't have to work themselves to death to make a great game, they had fun doing it, and everybody loved the finished product.
Yeah. So going back to like the design of like X-Men Legends then, where maybe you kind of had to invent the workflow a little bit and kind of like invent the blueprint to some extent. Do you remember those discussions and what games were referenced? Is it tough when you're making an action RPG not to just immediately reference Diablo 2, I guess would be at that time?
So Diablo was hugely important to us, where you're looking at an action RPG genre and you're like, okay, what's the most successful example you can draw from here? After Diablo, right? So that was what drove a lot of those decisions. But in the early days, I came on partway through the first Legends, so I wasn't privy to what happened there, but I do know it was grotesquely overscoped because we had no idea what we were doing with multi-platform development at the time. By the time we got to X-Men Legends 2, it was much better understood. We're not going to change much. We're keeping the same people, the same tech. We have a story, so these are the main beats. And I think at that point we were just sort of getting to hit our stride as a team. And so we were like, okay, sure, there's like an Egypt level. I get it. We can do Egypt. It wasn't until MUA that we were totally envisioning environments and we were coming up with gags and all these sorts of things. We could just run with it.
Yeah.
I know that first game, I don't know if you were a part of this, but like that first game opens and they sold it as like 4-player Diablo with X-Men. But you play single player for a while and then you can play 2-player and you don't unlock 4-player for like an hour or something. Do you remember the design decision behind that?
Happily, no, because I wouldn't want anyone to hang that one on me after the fact. But it made sense from a story perspective.
Sure.
Right, I get that. And
cares?
it was new to all of us. Previously, what had we done? Single player and multiplayer. We'd never done co-op really to the same extent that we did for an action RPG. So there's a lot of learning, and we'll just put that under the learning column.
Yeah,
I wasn't on the project, but I suspect it had a lot to do with the fact that just like building a cooperative tutorial is really hard. Because like you're teaching somebody the game, and it's just so much easier to say, we're going to pop you into this dialogue and wait for you to do this action, and then we unlock the next door. And like making that work with 1 to 4 players, just like anything with 1 to 4 players, is really hard.
Sure.
But tutorials, especially like a special scenario in a game where things have to happen in this order, and I imagine it was just a crutch.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that
Go
makes
ahead and
sense.
ask a technical engineer just how easy it is to make cooperative multiplayer networked experience.
Yeah, how much of a pain in the ass is that?
Yeah, that was fun. Yes.
She's blocked it up.
No, the thing was that the multiplayer, the online multiplayer in those games is actually like lockstep synchronized simulation, basically. So it's not like a first person shooter where there's like a server and then clients that sort of report in. This is like everybody's has to do everything, all the calculations together. Otherwise you desync. And so there was a lot of time spent like hunting through the code to make sure that there weren't any extra random number generator calls happening on one machine versus another machine. Like the worst bug we had going through the end of MUA was looking for this crash or this desync that would only happen if you were playing with people with different resolution screens.
Oh no.
And it turned out it was because on one of those like wide screens, somebody, if they were off on the edge and they did it some kind of power and it kicked off a particle effect, it called the random number generator one more time than the people with the smaller screens. And then hours later, it could be that they'd be out of sync. And then they'd lose connection.
It just took 5 grown adults 45 minutes to set up a Skype call. So you tell me how difficult creating that game was.
Oh God, I can't remember. I can't imagine that. Do you guys, do you remember like your favorite moment from the game's development overall? Is there one meeting or one discussion that stands out to you?
Any one single moment.
Most fun day?
Did any of the Marvel guys come to the studio and look at it? Did Stan Lee come and shake your hands?
Came out once or twice, or
Probably. I think they kept them away from the folks, in the trenches. They didn't want to present a bad image. I would say, to me, some of the most noteworthy things occurred once we got the actual voice actors to record lines. Because frequently, we had some really big name folks doing some of the voices. And our writer, Bob Love, would go out and record them in the studio in LA. And invariably, he would ask them to do some special lines. I remember one time we had the guy who did Squidward on SpongeBob SquarePants wish somebody's son a happy birthday.
Oh, that's good.
That was cool.
That's always fun.
The guy who played Bender from Futurama.
Oh, yeah.
Joe DiMaggio.
Like, I think he'd have him insult various people from Raven, too, so that we get this roll of insults.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
and the Deadpool. Can
yeah.
I do the haiku? Remember the Oz haiku?
I don't remember the Oz.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had one of our level designers. His name is Oz. Fantastic guy. Loved him to death. And he had a penchant for haiku and for disliking broccoli. And somehow these two things had coalesced in his life, such that he had at one point in time written a haiku about broccoli and his opinion thereof. This made its way to the voice actor doing the lines for Deadpool. And so we actually got Deadpool recording a haiku by my good friend Oz. How did it go? I hate broccoli and think it totally sucks. Why is it not meat? And when you have somebody doing lines like that, those are standout moments.
Yeah.
Breaking the fourth wall
That's
into
pretty
their
good.
office, which is a very weird thing.
I bet everybody who played the game was like, "Who's Oz? Like, is that a comic character? I don't know that one."
Deep cut.
Yeah.
Do you remember the reception when the game came out? What was that like?
I think people really liked
Yeah?
I think so. I was asleep.
it.
Okay. All right.
I
Naturally.
mean, I still occasionally, if I mention it on Twitter or something, people will be like, I loved that game!
Yeah.
So,
I feel like we didn't really appreciate just how much of a hit it was at first,
Yeah.
But the thing you gotta understand about game development is like there's a sort of like, I don't know if you call it like depression or something that happens when you actually like ship a game off, because you think of it like you finish the game and you put it out and then you just wait for the reception, but it's really this like rolling set of events where it's like, okay, we send this thing off to Microsoft, and a week later they get back and okay, we gotta fix some bugs, and then it's like we're ready to be done with this and we're fixing bugs and then we gotta submit it again, And then finally, Microsoft signs off on it, and then Sony signs off on it, and Activision signs off on the PC version or whatever. It's just like this. It gets to be kind of a drag at the end, and so I think by the time it comes out, most of the team is just ready to like take a vacation and be done with it.
Right, right.
Sometimes we'll read reviews and stuff like that, but
if you ever see any videos online of, and here's the development team as their game goes gold, and they pan out and there are 50 people cheering, yeah! No, total crap has never happened in the history of ever.
Yeah.
That is not a thing.
Yeah.
What you have are a bunch of bedraggled people who have been put through a seemingly endless series of mentally and emotionally exhausting events at all hours of the day and night for weeks on end. And then when they're still waiting for the next apocalyptically bad thing to occur, someone says, oh, it went gold.
Oh, by the way, wait, we're done? Why are we here?
Yeah,
Well, not really
it's like the end of Ferris Bueller. It really is. You're still here?
Right.
Go home.
yeah.
Were you guys so exhausted?
Usually by the time it goes gold, half the team has moved on to the next project.
Right. So it's usually like the tech programmers like me who would be, like just sort of waiting around being like, are they going to call me on a weekend? Am I going to have to go in and fix the PS3 build because it didn't pass cert? Or like, and then, you'll get an email that's like, nope, we passed this time. Hooray. Yeah. It'll be shipped.
Yeah.
I guess we're done now. Were you?
The only one that was really, really cool was X-Men Origins Wolverine. We passed cert on all 7 SKUs on the first try.
Really?
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Never been done in the history of Activision.
Me.
Excellent programming. Look at this.
Other people will claim credit. They lie.
I still put that on my resume.
That is impressive. I liked that game, by the way. Good job.
Yeah, bring us on again to talk about Wolverine.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that more of a pain in the ass overall?
It was a different pain.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Largely the same people. Everybody still loved the material. Still working with probably the same Marvel contacts.
For the attack.
Yeah, 87% of the gameplay was done by this person right here.
Really? That jump attack?
Yeah, we'll happily talk about that another time. So I will say that I remember one other thing about the response to Mua by game players. And these come out just randomly every now and then. It's not like you're walking down the street every day and people comment on the games you ship. But there was a client of mine that I worked with earlier in the year where I'd been working with them for several weeks before they emailed me at one point. It's on a Slack message, all caps. Wait, you worked on Mua? Right, it was just that kind of response. And then not too long ago, I was in a parent-teacher meeting at school where all of my son's teachers are gathered around the table, and one of them says, hey, by the way, did you work at Raven? Yes, I did. Did you work on Marvel Ultimate Alliance? Yes, I did. I played that game all the time in college. Oh, okay, that's good to know. I think I own shirts older than you, but that's still really, I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's awesome.
That's fun. Did you guys ever work on another Ultimate Alliance game? Or were you happy to have somebody else like kind of take over that franchise?
Tricky?
That's tough to say. There are probably things that, we'll have this gratuitously edited later, so Activision's legal department doesn't phone us up. But I think we all enjoyed everything that we worked on there, just on the whole Legends series there, that we probably felt there were more wacky things we could try. And if there was a character somewhere, like Major Maldives, I'm sure that's a character somewhere in the Marvel universe, that we were like, sure, get him in here. What's a superpower? So I think we probably would have been happy to do that for a while yet. And there was so little burnout associated with it.
Yeah, they were so smooth, the projects.
At the same time, I think we were ready to do something new after that point, at least on the game programming team, because it was like, it was it was an engine that was built for that game, but it was also like built just for that game. And so the moment you try to do something different, it was very constraining, so.
Right.
The Wolverine game, we moved on to the Unreal Engine, which is its own challenges, but it was also like really exciting from a technical point of view. Like, hey, we can actually make big open world environments now.
I think we would have been ready to make another game on Unreal in the X-Men or Marvel universe.
Yeah. Had that opportunity presented itself.
Yes.
Which was a big maybe.
I'm not saying it did.
Got it. So is there any fraction of Ultimate Alliance 2 that is your guys' work? Was that game picked up by the other studio once you started development on 2?
They started with the code base from Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
They did, actually. I I almost got shipped to that studio for a few months.
Oh, really?
Wow. Okay.
I was
Really?
like, no.
Yes, please send me to Albany, New York in January. That'll be great.
Wow.
I think there were emails exchanged, and I think they figured it out,
Yeah.
and some phone calls and stuff. But it was, there was a point where they were like, Allison, they might need somebody for a few months.
Yeah.
3 months. You don't have family, do you?
I have a toddler, like, I don't.
That's not even a person yet,
Yeah, it
really.
doesn't
I mean,
count.
come on.
So I do remember this, though, when they visited the office, when they were like doing their pre-pro or whatever, and they sent their
Yeah.
leads team to come talk with us. I remember they came in and they had sheafs of printouts and graphs and charts about how they had overanalyzed the entirety of Ultimate Alliance. And I remember them sitting down with us on the level design team and with Vondrak, the project lead, saying, so we thought it was fascinating how you so carefully crafted the acceleration of the difficulty of enemies, as you can see through these charts, throughout every level of the game, carefully adhering to this ratio of powers to, and we're all nodding, we totally did that. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Well, I'm so glad you recognized our genius there.
That was some hard math.
Totally made it up.
Hey, just in general, what was Raven like as a studio in that era? How would you describe it and maybe compare it to other studios if you have any point of comparison there?
Did you guys get sick of the hot tub parties? Is that
Oh, interesting.
too
Yeah,
many?
the thing is, it's like we're in the Midwest. I think there's probably a higher ratio of people with families working here, you know, and so most people who work at Raven like have lives outside of the studio and really valued their family time. So you don't see like a ton of people. I mean, there's still some people who, you know, work late at night just because they want to or whatever, but for the most part, people tried to go home at a reasonable hour.
It kind of varied by team.
Yeah,
I mean, because I was on the Quake 4 team, and that was some different, some younger folks who didn't have kids and family at home, and so the Marvel team was definitely more the family team, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think as a company as a whole, it was kind of a family, as you said, family-oriented company. Like we put babies born during projects in the credits, and like it was a nice environment.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think a couple aspects of that, one of which is Raven is the big fish in the pond in this area. So it tends to be a little insular in that regard. There isn't really, or hadn't been at that time, a community to be part of. So it's sort of, you work at Raven, this is your world, right? So there was that aspect to it. But also, as Allison said, during that period of time, for many years, Raven was a 2 or 3 concurrent project studio. And so there would always be one that was sort of in pre-production, one that's tailing off, and then one that's in the thick of production. And as a result of that, you would tend to see very different scenarios from team to team at any given point in time. These folks are over here laughing it up because they're in pre-production and it's all cool concept art and whatever. These people are the ones that have been trying to ship a game for 18 weeks, and so they just look like they've been beaten with sticks. And then you had the Marvel team, which had largely been together for years and years and years, working on the same technology, just kind of perfecting our formula. And so we were sort of over here doing lots of fun stuff at really reasonable hours, not killing ourselves. Is a bit of survivor's guilt there, to be honest, because we'd be looking down the corridor going, wow, has that guy moved in the past day? I don't think he has.
God.
Someone should feed him. So those were some of the things that I remember working at Raven at the time.
Yeah.
Because I didn't work crunch on Marvel products, but that Quake 4 was,
That was brutal.
a lot of overtime.
Oh, God. What do you guys think about the current state of Raven and as a support team for Call of Duty?
I'm just really, I mean, personally, I think anytime a studio manages to survive as long as Raven has at that size, that's always super impressive. And I mean, I remember thinking, like, when we worked on Singularity, just how messy it was and how inexperienced some of the team members were and some of the leads were and stuff. And now I look at Raven and it's like, man, is there anybody working at Raven who hasn't been there for 10 years?
Yeah.
You know, like they're just really a lot of senior people over there now.
Yeah.
So
And some people have gone back. I mean, they've left Raven for whatever reason and then gone back later. I know at least a few people have gone back.
Yeah. And there are any number of things that you can pick apart about any game studio because the industry has its negative aspects, right? But if you look at the fact that you've got two brothers who, and this is 20, how many years ago? 30 years ago now? Two brothers who maxed out their credit cards, brought in a programmer who hadn't graduated yet from the local university and had a buddy of theirs do the audio and made a game when nobody was making games. I mean, not just in Wisconsin, nobody was making games.
Yeah.
And they got this thing published, started a company. It was the first internally owned studio by Activision, got purchased by Activision before they did dozens of others.
Yeah.
And they're still in business. And, oh, by the way, we're part of the Call of Duty business unit, making $1 billion every Christmas.
Yeah.
I think those folks can freaking drop the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
If you look at like the last few Call of Duties that they've been involved with, they're always very hush-hush about the parts of the games that they work on, and you know, Activision doesn't like people to talk about it because people pick it apart for whatever reasons. But like, you can spot the things that Raven does, and you can see their DNA and things. It's like, oh yeah, I know that was a Justin Negretti sequence there, and stuff like that, because they've been working on this for how many years now, So it's just like, us working on MUA, the third game in the franchise, we knew what we were doing. Now they've been working on Call of Duty for 7 years, and they all know exactly what they're doing. So it's like they're just putting out really good stuff.
Yeah,
I get the sense that it's comfortable there now, working on what they know. So
that's the crazy part, though. I don't know if it takes some Midwestern humility just to think about what a huge part that team has had in so many Call of Duty games. And never really a spotlight shown on them,
right?
Because it detracts from what is considered the A team, I suppose. And
they don't seem grumpy about it. You don't hear that.
I don't know where you would hear it, but you think at some point somebody would explode. You say, please, we made 40% of that Call of Duty game. Please give us some goddamn respect around here.
Yeah, really quickly, let's just run down the list of every Call of Duty franchise installment that would have shipped in the past 10 years without Raven. Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I saw Raven's logo on a Call of Duty commercial. Like, you had seen franchise installment after installment where it was all Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer, Treyarch, and you would never even see the Raven logo on an ad. And I was hurting for the people. This is after I left the company. I was hurting for all of the friends that are still working there. They lose every summer.
Right.
Putting one of these installments out. You couldn't put their logo on the ad. So I'm glad that they are getting some of the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, they certainly deserve more. Aaron, did you work on some Call of Duty games then?
Yeah, I worked on Modern Warfare 3, and then I left during Ghosts.
Gotcha. What was that transition like in the studio then? Allison, were you there for that too?
Yeah, I worked on Black Ops.
Yeah.
Zombie mode. Nintendo Wii.
The Wii zombie mode. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I know both of you played that voraciously. So
Oh,
we'll
yeah,
talk
claim
about
to
that later.
fame.
It was great. We had to unload the menus, or we had to unload all the in-game assets just to load the menu assets,
Oh, my
and then
goodness.
dump all the menu assets.
Slicing the levels in
Yeah,
half and then in half again.
The Wii does not have a lot of memory.
And the
Wow.
zapper, the gun, the peripheral. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, hell yeah. But what was that transition like to be within Raven then as they shifted over to Call of Duty support? Could you feel the vibe changing?
Yeah. I'll let you go first. Allison.
Yeah, I mean, it was a rough time for the company because we'd had a lot of projects that hadn't made as much money as they needed to keep everybody there. We'd had one large layoff already before that point. There were projects that were being worked on that got canceled. So I think everybody did realize that it was like, okay, this shift has to happen or Raven's not going to be here.
Right.
So that was something. And then I was actually in the second round of layoffs. But,
Same here. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
What was that day like?
Sort of, you just knew that there just didn't need to be as many. There was 3 teams there before the first layoffs, and then you just knew there was more people than were needed.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you remember when they had the new CFO come and speak in the mocap studio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they had the whole company come out, because rarely do we have a C-level executive. Well, they don't even know where Wisconsin is, much less do we have a studio there. But he came out, everybody's in the company, 100 some odd folks, and he made the comment at one point. This tells you how far back in the day this was. I think Uncharted had maybe just come out, the first one. And people were asking, when do we get to do more original IP and all these sorts of things? And this guy's job, CFO, is to maintain the books. He monitors cash flow. That's his job. And he said, okay, let me put this in perspective for you. Uncharted, yeah, everybody's nodding. Yeah, awesome game. Yeah. I wouldn't have greenlit that. Single-player game cost $40 million to make? No, we won't be doing anything like that. And everybody was just pretty much totally silent, like, okay, we get Activision's standpoint on this whole thing going forward.
Yeah.
It will be what is making money as opposed to what do we think would be cool.
Wow.
And that signaled a bit of a shift, I would say.
That's
I
wild.
think for me, like as far as the transition personally, it was, with the Marvel game, I think Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I think we peaked at 50 people on that team or something like that. As low as 30 at one point, I think. And so all of us had just a ton of responsibility and autonomy with what we were creating, So like, I owned 3/4 of the hero moves in that game, and I designed those and implemented them, And then we got pulled onto Call of Duty, where it was like, okay, we are one of 3
Autonomy.
we are one of 3 companies working on this game, and the other 2 are in California, and we're like the C team, basically, And so it was just it was a hard transition for me, because it was like I went from working on stuff that I owned to being like one of the 10 people working on this one level of the game for like 2 months, and working on this section of the game that people are going to see for like 20 seconds and never play again, And so it was just I felt like I wasn't working on what I wanted to anymore, But at the same time, we have like, our friend Corey, the artist, who's just like, man, this is the best thing ever for him. Just like, he just gets to take environments and make them really pretty, and it can run at 60 frames a second, and it's a really optimized engine, so he can make it look really cool. And as far as I know, he's still there working on Call of Duty.
Looks good on a resume.
That's cool.
So when that CFO is explaining the future of the company, is anybody raising their hand and saying, hey, you know what game would make money? Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. Let's do that, please.
I think after the Uncharted comment, we were done with the Q&A. I don't think we had much reason to talk to this guy. He's the same planet, different worlds, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, something you got to understand is I think Moa sold 4 million copies, maybe 5 million over its lifetime total.
I bought 2.5 million myself, so I'm pretty sure the number's high.
And that includes like a bundle deal with an Xbox or something like that, So, like, as cool as that was for Raven, like it was our biggest success to date, that still pales in comparison to what a Call of Duty game makes. And so it's just the industry as a whole is kind of congealed around the big successes, and what looked like a huge hit 10 years ago is like total failure now, So
Were there ever any rumblings of a third game back then?
a third.
No.
Keith, come on. Blink twice if there are rumblings of a Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
Can we
I am not under duress.
Somebody thought of it, right?
I did, well, maybe. Okay, you go right ahead, Allison. Allison, who does not fear the threats of legal departments, would like to
come
speak to
on.
something.
Allison, what do you got?
I don't know. I mean, people leaving, when we were no longer at Raven, there were people who were around and tried to start companies in the Madison area to do not Marvel necessarily, but hey, we have expertise in making adventure fighting games, but nothing ever really got congealed.
So the spiritual successor, that type of thing? Or
I mean,
going...
that was probably the dream, but it
Yeah.
never really got past, just people meeting up and talking like, hey, we've got all the skills, we can do this.
Hello, DC, we're right over here.
Yeah. Well, and that was before, I mean, I wonder if it would be different now with Unity and Unreal more accessible if like people were making like if that skill set, not to make anything licensed, but
yeah, I mean, back in this time, the idea of using a game engine was kind of a different story.
right.
There wasn't, a race to the bottom between Unity and Unreal to get everyone on the planet to use their stuff.
Right.
It was, sure, you can absolutely use our engine. Please send the $1 million licensing fee to the following PO box. So, having anybody break off from a significant development house and want to do something on their own was kind of an unlikely scenario.
Yeah. When did the three of you first hear about Ultimate Alliance 3? Nintendo's version.
2 months ago?
Yeah.
57 minutes.
What reaction do you have towards Marvel and Nintendo teaming up here with Team Ninja?
Yeah. Have you seen those trailers at all?
I think I watched one.
I don't use the internet.
Yeah.
Come on.
It looks like MUA, it looks like they're sticking kind of to the formula, and that's pretty cool. Like, it's always cool when, I don't know, it's a good feeling to see something that we made, what was this, 11 years ago now?
Yeah.
And to have people still look at that as like the canonical, thing.
Well,
to
it's a
build a game
testament,
on,
right?
So,
It's a testament to we figured something out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a lark.
They still have like the self shading with the outlines and all that stuff. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I still see that Raven style, I guess.
I do remember when we first got that in the engine. When Chris Peterson did that, like over the weekends. What if you flip the normals? So I don't know. So for the longest time, people said that Legends was cell shaded rendering because they didn't know what else to call it. And originally it wasn't. It wasn't anything special. We had a 3D environment with 3D models in it. But we had a particularly fantastic artist at the time, Chris Peterson. Got to throw his name out because he basically came up with this just amazingly simple but visually awesome technique of kind of double rendering the character model, and the outer shell was flipped around and black, and so it just outlined the comic. And that's what made people say, oh, it's cell shaded. That's astonishing. Good job to you, Raven Software. And it was really just Chris did this thing over the weekend. We came in on Monday and went, holy crap. And the visual style was kind of just nailed for the remainder of the series. And I guess you still see elements of that.
Yeah. That's wild. Do a lot of other companies, when they're doing cell shading, just use that same technique? Or do you think that's a Raven secret here?
Everyone copied us.
Okay.
We did it first.
Okay.
We invented comic books, too. And the pen.
All right. Okay. Gotcha. I feel like we didn't focus much, Aaron, just on hero moves in particular. Is there a certain move in that game that was your favorite or you felt the most attached to?
My favorite by far was Captain America. Just because it's the funny thing about the game is like most of the moves are actually one of like 5 types. You've got like your punch, your radial attack, your charge move where you smash through stuff, and then there's a few that kind of step out of that mold. So like Storm has her lightning bolts and stuff like that. Captain America was like he has a shield throw where you throw the shield and then he kind of holds his hand out like this and tracks it, and you could steer the shield around the environment and like, bounce it off of things. And like I said, we had like 2 weeks to work on these things. I might have fudged it a little bit and taken 3 weeks on that one because it was like just dealing with how do you deal with the shield bouncing off the environment, and what point do you have to like bring it back to the player that threw it and stuff like that. So I was really proud of that.
Wasn't there some weird Scarlet Witch stuff?
She could turn people into boxes or something, isn't that right?
That's right. Yeah, you could turn. You'd shoot a projectile at people, and there was like a 1 in 3 chance they'd turn into a crate, and then you could break the crate and get like health packs out or something like that.
Was that your touch?
No, it wasn't my idea. I implemented it, but it was somebody else's idea. I think it was just a designer said like, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if, you could turn into people into a crate or like drop a
Wouldn't it be funny if
drop a 5-ton weight in their head from the sky or something like that?" Or
Whose idea was the competitive co-op? Like that
end
game.
Competitive co-op?
Yeah, so like at the end of each level, there would be those like.
Oh,
bars.
right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That got, when we were doing testing on multiplayer, that got like hotly contested. We got really competitive about it.
I firmly believe that.
We decided that Human Torch was like super cheap. Like he was awful because he smashed all the boxes with his area effect.
Not fair at all. Awesome.
That's cool.
Anything else you guys want to share from that era you want to get off your chest?
Yeah, no.
It was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
As many things as I could lament about the state of game development in a number of aspects, we got to do some really fun stuff with a great team of people, and we stayed together for years, and were given pretty much a dream opportunity by Raven, by Activision, by Marvel, to just stick together and do some great projects. Some sold better than others, but we put them all in boxes on time, and people like them. And I guess Team Ninja still thinks that some of the stuff we did was okay a decade later.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that seems all right. Congratulations,
Yeah,
you guys.
good job.
Thanks for Skyping in and reflecting with us. We appreciate your time.
Yeah.
thank you for taking us down memory lane. with
Oh,
me.
man. Anytime. We'll do it again for Wolverine, do it again for your vision for Ultimate Alliance 2. We have so many different avenues to go down in the future. That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.